Hi guys, so I'm going to make a little video about demystifying crow pose or Bakasana. So just a couple of things to help you if you're struggling with getting into crow and how you can bring that into your practice. One of the most important things with crow pose is that you're careful with your wrists. It does put quite a bit of pressure on your wrists, so you do want to make sure that you've warmed your wrists up before you attempt to practice Bakasana or crow pose. So, you know, doing some wrist circles or anything like that, stretching out the forearms, this can kind of help as well. And, you know, maybe just working on some wrist strengthening exercises can help as well. The other thing that you want to think about with crow pose is making sure your hips are open because it is an externally rotated posture. So yogi squat can be a good way to do that. So if you're kind of moving around, you're making sure you're coming down maybe into a yogi squat, maybe the heels can stay down, getting a little movement into the hips. Taking butterfly pose, sitting down can be a good way to warm up into the hips as well. One of the major things that crow pose calls upon is actually core strength. It's amazing how much core strength you need in these kind of arm balance postures. So any kind of core strengthening exercises you can do to kind of fire up your core will help as well. And definitely as you're in it or trying to attempt to go into it, you definitely want to think about pulling your navel up into your spine. That activation of that inner core will actually help you in this pose. So for today's practice, I'm going to show you a couple variations and ways to work into it. So I've got 2 blocks here. Know that you could also stack up some books. These are the foam squishy blocks. They aren't as good to use in crow pose, I'm going to be honest. It's better to have a harder surface. I'll show you in a minute why. Because you're going to stand on it with your feet. So if you've got like cork blocks, that can actually be the best thing to use. So as I've said, we've kind of made sure before you attempt this that you've opened your hips a little bit, worked on the core, warmed up the wrists. So one of the major mistakes as a teacher that I see for crow pose, and I'll kind of show you, is that people try to lift up. It's not a lift up. You're not trying to lift yourself up high. You're actually pushing yourself forward in space. So let me show you the difference. So if I'm here, and this is kind of the setup for crow pose, so say you get into a yogi squat or malasana, you want to bring your arms to the insides of your knees. My heels don't always go down, so I'm lifted on my heels. And this can be just a nice prep here for practicing crow pose. It does not really matter where the knees are on your shoulders, behind your triceps, if they're on the outside or the inside, so don't worry too much about that. But what I often see is people trying to do is putting their arms down and then thinking that they need to lift themselves up this way to somehow lift up. That's really not what you're going to do. You want to go forward in order to find that balance. So what you really want to think about is your chaturanga arms. So you know chaturanga is when in your sun salutation you're here with that 90-degree angle. So this is that angle that you're going to, same angle you're going to want for crow pose. So I'm going to show it here, getting into it without any props, and then I'm going to show you how to do it with props. So as I said, it's that forward motion that you want to look about, what you want to think about. So I'm going to lift my hips up just for a moment, and I'm going to place my knees, for me, as high up as I can. And then I'm going to look forward. That's another huge key. When you look back, that actually sets up you doing a somersault. That's the last thing you want to do. So look forward. In fact, jut your chin out a little. Now, instead of trying to lift up, I'm actually going to bring myself forward in space. The other key here is you want to squeeze your heels in towards your glutes. You don't want to lift up here. This is not correct. You actually are down lower. The spine is rounded, and I'm hugging my heels in towards my glutes. I keep looking forward, and I'm hugging in my core, and I'm squeezing my knees in towards my elbows. So it's that forward motion that's important, and it's scary because you feel like you're going to go all the way forward. So one way you can practice it, one variation, is bringing a block underneath the feet. So perch yourself up on a block here. What this is going to do is lift you up higher already. So a lot of times that'll help to set you up where you want to be. Now you can practice here and just begin to lean forward and put the weight on your arms. You don't have to come all the way up. Maybe you just begin to feel that. And then maybe as you lift, you can lift one toe up, And maybe put it down, lift the other toe up, put it down, and then eventually you'll see if you can work both toes up. Another thing you can do with your other block is have it so that it would be underneath your forehead. And you can stack up more than one block. You can use, I don't know, a box or something. You can also put a pillow in front of your face if you think that you're gonna fall forward. You kind of have to measure this one out where you would be. And you can come forward and just have that block there so that you know that it's there. So that takes away that forward. But even though you've got the block, I want you to set it a little forward so you're still remembering that your chin has to come forward. So even though I'm using the block, I'm still looking forward and jutting my chin forward a little bit. So those are a couple variations that you can use to play with crow pose. Again, I'll show it one more time with no props. And remember, even just sitting here and thinking about crow pose or Bakasana will help you to one day to eventually get into it. And like I said, if this bothers your wrists, spend some time doing some strengthening and stretching for the wrists. You want to make sure that for all arm balances that your wrists are healthy. If they're not, sometimes arm balances aren't for you, and that's okay. You can be really good at doing handstands or inversions instead, or forearm stands, something where you're not using your wrists. Most arm balances, really the key to them is the core strength that I found very much so in my own practice. So again, I kind of start in a yogi squat position. I look forward, I find my chaturanga arms. It doesn't matter how far apart your hands are, it's kind of up to you with your shoulders. I keep mine about shoulder width. I have them a little forward. I do lift my hips up to start. Maybe I want to stretch out a little here. And then I come up on my toes, and again, I put my knees as wherever they're good on your arms. So that could be on the back of your triceps, kind of like mine are. There's some people that like to do crow with their knees on the outsides of their shoulders, or more even on the insides of their armpits. It's completely up to you. Look forward, and again, bring yourself forward, and then hug the heels to the glutes. Remember, you're not trying to lift up here. You're actually staying low, and you're hugging your heels in towards your glutes. Hug your navel into your spine. That rounds the spine and keeps the contraction. And then once you get good at that, next step, practice your ninja escape into your chaturanga.